Another week and another wagon here on Driving.ca. This is the 2024 Volvo V90 Cross Country. This is really one of the last and really one of the truest wagons and really one of the truest Volvos you can still get. Today, we're gonna go around. We're gonna see what this thing's like to drive, what it's like to live with, and what some of its surprising and indeed disappointing shortcomings are. There are so few wagons still available today, but fortunately, the examples that Volvo offers are still pretty solid. Here in the V90 Cross Country, we have a very pleasant, full-sized, everyday family vehicle. Even if you're not running a family around too, it's just a dignified, usable, sensible vehicle. Not only is this wagon far more proportionate to most drivers' actual needs than an SUV, it still has pretty well just as much space as most of the SUVs you can still buy today. Better still, the V90 Cross Country drives better than an SUV. Whereas the smaller Volvo V60 Polestar engineered that we had the other week takes a slightly smaller, stiffer, and sportier approach to wagoning, this thing is just ready to haul. We don't have the same silly power as the V60. That car, with its plug-in hybrid powertrain, ran 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. That is so much, and it makes it quick, but you don't necessarily need quick. That said, this thing isn't any slouch either. The V90 Cross Country, with its sole available B6 powertrain, runs a B420T engine. That gives you 295 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. That power comes from a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that's augmented by a 13 horsepower integrated starter generator and mild hybrid system. That hybridization, of course, is mild. This is a 48-volt system that runs off a little lithium battery of under half a kilowatt hour. That's just enough to help the V90 Cross Country along and to ease its fuel economy, but it won't give you the all-electric option that you get in the plug-in hybrid V60 T8. Likewise, running solely on gasoline, this thing is not quite the quiet dream that V60 T8 is, but it's still plenty smooth, and exterior noises are really well isolated. We've got dual pane glass, plenty of sound deadening, and on top of that, some excellent audio to drown anything else out. Also excellent is Volvo's Pilot Assist system. This setup is not quite as forthright or arguably even quite as clever as what you'll get out of a lot of the Hyundai Genesis products right now. That said, it takes care of a lot really comfortably, really confidently, and especially importantly, very smoothly. Whereas a lot of adaptive cruise control systems will judder in response when a vehicle crosses into your lane, this makes its transitions very smoothly. It doesn't mind either if it can tell that a car is leaving the lane. It will actually rubber band a lot more organically than a lot of those very simple binary systems that are currently out on the market. Set a speed, let it follow the lane, keep your hands on the wheel so that it doesn't scold you, it'll just do its thing. Controls, meanwhile, feel very Volvo. It's all very soft, it's smooth, it's an easy vehicle to pilot. As is the norm nowadays, we've got electric power steering to manage that steering assistance. We've also got brake-by-wire now instead of a traditional hydraulic connection with the pedal. Finally, the electronic throttle has been the norm for many years at this point. It's all just fine. If anything, however, the complaint is in the lack of controls that we actually have here in the cabin. We have the very basic hard settings, you know, the control stalks, the turn signals. But apart from defog and defrost, all we have here in the center are hard buttons for media controls. There's a button to the left of the steering wheel that'll open the trunk, but otherwise we've got no brightness setting for the cluster. And that cluster too is all digital now. It's a 12-inch display. It's tidy, it's unintrusive, but at night, even the black screen is light pollution in your peripheral vision. It's not quite ideal. Also worth noting here in the V90 is something that's become something of a Volvo signature, this crystal drive selector. It's a nice-ish touch. It feels very soft in the hand, almost acrylic actually. I personally find it a little tacky and a little out of sync with the rest of the interior, but that is subjective. More importantly though, Volvo has finally remedied an important complaint from earlier deployments of this crystal shifter. In the past, moving from drive to reverse actually required double knocks of the drive selector to actually put it in gear. It's just inconvenient and confusing. People would get in, try to back it up, and then it would just be in neutral? What? Fortunately though, it's now got double détente in both directions. So it works as you would expect it to intuitively, and as it should in the first place. Though the Cross Country, which it's worth noting is now the only flavor of V90 that you can buy in Canada, rides higher and is supposed to be the more rugged model, it's still on very fashionable but slightly uncomfortable large wheels. The V90 Cross Country comes standard with 19s, and if you get the Ultimate here, you're riding on 20s. At that point, you're on really low profile tires. Those are more expensive to put on and don't give you as much sidewall to actually absorb harsh bumps. If you're coming out of something like an older XC70, you may be a little disappointed in this. Fortunately, the suspension is otherwise quite compliant and altogether pleasant. You've even got the option of air ride assistance there in the back to keep everything level if you're hauling a big trailer. Set it upright and the V90 Cross Country is actually rated to tow 2.5 tons. That's a race car trailer. That's awesome. You don't need a massive pickup. So then, a pretty nice drive, but Volvo has never really been about the driving dynamics so much as that utility, safety, and comfort. Well, this thing does deliver quite well. First thing, of course, this thing has received top marks and top picks basically every crash and safety test that it's been subjected to. That's no surprise, and I've got to say, it does actually make some of the little frustrations in this car a little bit more palatable. One of the first things that you'll notice when you climb in and close the door in either the V90 or the V60 wagons is this very high belt line. These cars will sort of swallow you, especially if you're shorter. Of course, up front you can raise the seat, but it does make things feel a little claustrophobic, especially when you've got such a substantial tunnel running down the center of the car. Now, that may not feel ideal, but we do have a panoramic glass roof that opens the cabin up significantly, and the greenhouse all around the perimeter of this wagon is actually surprisingly open for modern standards. And of course, with that comes the side impact safety and the whole mattress store worth of airbags that are all around this car. Cocooned as you are, then you're also able to enjoy some really phenomenal audio. These Volvos are really punching high with these Bowers & Wilkins premium audio systems. Along with the Burmester setups that you can get in Porsches now, these Volvos consistently rank atop my favorite audio experiences in most any car now. I enjoy driving these things, not because they're nice drives even, but just because I get to listen and hear more in my music than I'm used to. It's wonderful. Unfortunately, however, all of that is accessed through that infotainment system, which isn't good. In fact, the infotainment here in the V90, as in the rest of the Volvo line and the sister Polestar brand, is probably the least friendly implementation of Android Automotive OS that we've seen. All cramped within a 9-inch screen, you've got several parallel top-level menus. Within these, you have a lot of overlap, except when there isn't, but you expect there still should be. Other settings, even as basic as drive modes, get buried in a settings sub-menu. It's really bizarre and unintuitive. With that, you don't get many hard controls either. You get basic media controls and a physical volume knob, that's nice. You also get hard buttons for your defrost. But you don't even get a physical dimmer switch for the cluster, which is unfortunate because that thing doesn't auto brighten and dim quite as I would like. Climate is also accessed through that infotainment with a little swipe up from the bottom. That portion is easy enough to figure out. It's the rest of it though. The fact that you can download apps, but then are just left with a confusing tablet without the usual convenience of an organized tablet. So, infotainment. This button brings us to the ultimate top level menu. Now, we do have a slide down drawer up here for some basic settings. Here we have our more advanced settings, but really basic stuff, like driving modes, are accessed through here. It's silly and inconvenient. Climate, accessed through this drawer down here. Then here is our app library for anything we download from the Android Automotive OS App Store. This gives you native Spotify, native Google Maps. You can set this up with Waze. Certain apps like Google Maps will even load into the center cluster, but they can sometimes be slow to load in. Alternatively, you have access to Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are, however, wired applications. You don't get wireless connectivity here. It just doesn't play well, but in a way, it almost feels appropriate that one of my greatest complaints about this Volvo is simply its effort to try to play modern where it doesn't really seem to see a need to. Now, I spoke of claustrophobia with that belt line, but seating, it must be said, is very comfortable and very supportive. These seats are not as aggressive as what we saw in that V60 Polestar engineered the other week, but they are wonderful, and as equipped in this here Ultimate model, they have a massaging function too. Across 5 patterns with 3 power settings, there's quite a range of adjustability here, although not with quite the smoothness that you might expect if you've been test driving a Mercedes. The Genesis 80 and 90 models also, I would say, offer a slightly smoother, more satisfying, and less intrusive massage function, if that is something important to you. Something the current Genesis models won't do, however, is let you run your seat heaters and ventilation at the same time. That can provide a really nice sensation, though I must say it's not executed perfectly here. This sliding forward support benefits from heat, but isn't a part of the ventilation system. As a result, you can get a really chilly butt and really toasty thighs. It's neat until it's uncomfortable. Here in the back, we've got a good amount of space, and certainly a lot more than you would get in the V60. This center tunnel is still pretty disruptive in this model, but we've got even more legroom, and my toes in this V90 don't hit the bottom of the front seats the way they were in the V60. Overhead again, the panoramic roof leaves a good bit of headroom for adults. I could easily spend a couple hours back here. I've even got my own seat heater and these nifty little sunshades. With those seats folded down, you're looking at just over 1,500 liters of cargo space. Leave them up though, and you're still at 714. That is phenomenal cargo capacity, well beyond almost anything else in the segment. Then come cargo time, we've got a proper fold flat. The rear carpet mat will actually even extend over this to keep everything extra clean. Excellent. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, the V90 is, it should be quite evident, a very nice vehicle. This is a nice place to be, a wonderful way to eat up the miles. That infotainment could be better. Fuel economy, not the best by modern standards, but still respectable, especially for all the car that setup is actually hauling about. To its credit as well, while certainly not an inexpensive vehicle, the V90 Cross Country offers a stronger value proposition than you're gonna get out of the smaller, albeit sportier, V60 Polestar engineered. Of course, as something of a niche product for a more exacting customer, there aren't a lot of these things moving, and as sort of a necessary result, there isn't a huge variety in options for these cars. As I've mentioned, the V90 Cross Country is the only flavor of V90 that's left now. With that too, it only comes in 2 trims now, the Plus and the Ultimate. Now the Plus gives you effectively all that you need. It's not even worth listing off the options list because it's really just car. And with all of the premium features and functions that you would expect at this point of a car that costs more than 70K. Canadian 2024 MSRPs, once you've included PDI, well, you're looking at 72.8 for the Plus models, or 79.7 for the Ultimate. Now, that pricing on the Plus, I can work with. The car does feel appropriately premium for that value. Step up to the Ultimate though, and you have to want it. Because at that point, you're looking at almost 10% more for seat massagers, 2 more speakers. That's really just the highlight content there. Still, I've got to say, it's nice that Volvo is offering the full gamut of premium options on that top level Ultimate trim. And to be honest, this feels kind of like one of those cars that I may find myself looking to buy for a winter beater in about 10 or 15 years, once it's been through 1 or 3 owners. It's a nice car, and assuming they hold up in time for that, it's one that I look forward to when I'm old. For Driving.ca, I'm Al Alder. For more hot wagons and all the sensible stuff and all the rest, be sure to follow us online on Driving.ca and check out our socials over on Instagram and whatever the others are.